Hi, welcome back, and in this video I want to talk about a film stock that I tried recently, which is Candido 200. Now, you may have seen this up for sale on various websites. I picked my stock up from Analog Wonderland, and it bills itself, particularly if you go and look at their website, as basically a cheap colour film that is great quality and that you can use. And I wanted to look at a number of those claims, so I picked myself up 2 rolls from Analog Wonderland and shot them. One roll was shot in my Minolta SRT 101 and one roll was shot in my Canon FTB, and both those cameras have shot other rolls of films and they work perfectly fine, so I knew this would be a good test of the film stock itself. Now, as I say, it bills itself as a cheap colour film that, you know, for people who are fed up of paying, as they put it on the website, $20 for a roll of film. Now, one of the things that is not clear on the website is the actual provenance of the film. Is it a film stock that they've gone out and actually paid to be manufactured themselves? Highly unlikely. Or is it something that they've bought, respooled and repackaged and sold on? And even though it doesn't say it on the website, that is exactly what I believe it is. Now, there are a number of hints on the website that point in that direction, and being perfectly honest, some really big giveaways when you actually start working with the negatives and what's gone on with those. So I'm going to talk about some of that, and I'm going to break this video down into a number of chapters. So I'm going to first of all talk about, you know, is it actually a cheap film stock? Does it bear up to that price tag, or that claim around the price tag? I also want to talk about what I think it actually is, and then I want to talk about some of the pros and cons around this film, and whether I actually think it's worth picking up. So picking up first of all with, is it cheap? Now, one of the things you have to be careful of with Candido is when I bought it, it was only available, and this is the 200 ASA film I'm talking about here specifically, it was only available in 24 exposure rolls. And I picked it up from, as I say, Analog Wonderland. And I bought it for £9. They've currently sold out of it for that price for a roll of £9. And, you know, it currently goes, or its normal retail price on there was £10. So that's £10 for a 24 exposure roll, which certainly is cheaper than, you know, their claimed $20 for a roll of film. But if we also look on Analog Wonderland at the cheapest 200 ASA film stock as an alternative that's available, well, you can get Kodak Color Plus 200 in 24 exposure rolls for, well, they're currently selling it, although it's out of stock in both cases, for £8 a roll, or £8.50 a roll, I think it is. Let me just, look at the screen. Sorry, I had to lean forward to look at the screen. £8.50 a roll for 24 exposures, which means that the Kodak Color Plus 200 is cheaper than the Candido. And, you know, Kodak is a known quantity here, you know, and before or after discount, in this case, the Kodak is a cheaper film stock for a 200 ASA film. So the Candido product doesn't really seem to live up to its billing in that regard. Now, in full disclosure, at the present moment on the Candido website, they are actually saying that there is an 800 ASA film. They've there is an 800 coming, but the 200 ASA film is coming soon in 36 exposure rolls, and I think they're pricing that up for $8.99 a roll, which would then make it slightly cheaper than the Kodak Color Plus 200 at 36 exposure rolls, which, if off the top of my head, I believe is around about £10. But it puts it in kind of price parity. So, you know, why would you pick Candido over Colour Plus? It's going to have to be something really special if it's not going to escape that. You know, why shouldn't I just go for Kodak in this instance? So what I want to do next, is have a look at what I think this is in terms of a re-spooled film, okay? And I'll then come on to talk about my thoughts about the images and the pros and cons behind it. Right, so moving on to what I think this film stock is. So it's almost certainly something re-spooled. I don't personally believe that a startup can get a film manufactured from scratch for it to this level, and you know there are other things that kind of point in that direction. One is the fact that the rebate is not marked up with anything at all. So when you get the shots and you've scanned the negs, or just look at the negs, there's some barcoding indicators on there, but there's nothing else on there, which tends to point towards movie stock. Okay, and the most likely candidate movie stock wise for a 200 ASA film is pretty much Kodak Vision 3 200. Now, I happen to think, I can't prove it, but I happen to strongly believe that this is Kodak Vision 3 200T, which is a tungsten balance film. It's not a daylight balance film. It's used for shooting, or it's designed for shooting under tungsten lighting. If you go and have a look at Kodak's movie film database and their data sheets on this, they actually rate that film at 200 ASA under tungsten lighting or 125 ASA in daylight, and they recommend you use, I think it was an 85 filter for it to basically counteract for the blue tint the film stock will have in daylight if you don't correct it. And lo and behold, as the image I'm about to show you now demonstrates, if you don't correct this in post, it has a blue tint. So that is what you get naturally before you colour correct. Basically, just by playing around with the white balance, I use Negative Lab Pro for my workflow, and once I took off the white balance adjustment, this is what I'm left with, a blue tint, and this is consistent through all of the images across both cameras that I shot with this. So it is almost certainly a tungsten balanced film. What also gives it away is the fact that this film stock clearly does not have an anti-halation layer on it. Now, an anti-halation layer is what's put on traditional 35mm film stock as a backing layer to basically stop light that passes through the film bouncing around inside the camera, then causing glows around high contrast areas, particularly highlights. Now, film stock has what's called a remjet layer, which is a black layer put on the back of the film to absolutely remove any chances of halation. It also helps protect it from scratches and dirt and so on. And this film stock shows classic indicators of halation. I mean, hugely so. The shot I'm going to show you here, which I shot at a brewery I was photographing and their tap room, you can see the light in the back and just that glow around it, that pinky red glow around it. I also shot at Birdland, which is a bird-based wildlife park and gardens, and some flamingos, and flamingos are really bright against dark backgrounds, and there was some halation around the edges of those as well. Now, interestingly, on the Candido website, they also do mention both remjet and they say exactly, they do honestly say what remjet is, that it's an anti-halation layer that's applied to film base, etc, 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 but they don't say whether their film stock still has it or not. However, if we move down further on, they do actually say in one of their questions, and these are from their FAQs, which method, C41 or ECN2, is preferable for Candido films? And they quite clearly state that C41 is what's used. Now, C41 is standard colour negative processing for film designed for photography. If you try putting a film with a remjet layer through a C41 process, your developers will hate you because it will ruin their chemicals. The back layer will come off and it will absolutely tank everything that goes through there. ECN2 is a development method that includes a step to remove a remjet layer before you then develop the film. So, although they don't say it, this, based on what's in their FAQs, and I'll come on to this in the pros and cons, it's very misleading if you don't know what you're looking for in their FAQs. This is, quite frankly, a respool of movie film stock. I strongly suspect it's, as I say, Kodak Vision 3 200T that's been used here. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are other companies that have respooled. In fact, there's a lot of people that have respooled Kodak Vision 3 200T with or without the remjet layer on it. But all of the other ones I've come across have been upfront about doing that. Candido haven't been, in my view. So that's what I think it is, and what I want to move on to next is basically the pros and cons behind this film stock. So I want to start first of all with the pros. So the pros are that, well, to be blunt, Kodak Vision 3 200T is a great movie film stock, and it has the potential, with certain limitations, to make a really good stills film medium. So, you know, there's an awful lot of films that have been shot using 200T. Basically, if you've watched a Quentin Tarantino film in the last 15 odd years, it was shot on 200T. It gives really good saturation. I really like the saturation that you get out of it. It's got a nice, tight, well-defined grain, certainly for its 200 speed. That saturation I mentioned earlier is very, very dependent on the intensity of the light. So in really bright lighting conditions, it gives you these great punchy colours. They really are nice punchy colours. But as the light becomes more subdued, and say you move from bright sunshine to overcast conditions, that saturation's still there, but it almost gets dialed down and becomes a bit more muted and a bit more natural. And to my mind, it comes across very well in terms of how the human eye sees it. So in that regard, I think it's a really good film stock for its saturation and the way it works in conjunction with the lighting that you're currently dealing with. I also happen to think that it's got great tones as well. Really nice range of tones. So, you know, the pros from a film stock point of view here are many. You know, this is a good shout in my book as a film stock. It's got a great contrast range on it. It's got really good saturation that plays really well with the ambient lighting conditions and the intensity of the light. It's got a really good tonal range on it, and it's got absolutely great grain structure that is actually pretty good in terms of its fineness for its film speed. You know, and I'll be perfectly honest, if you go and have a look at what films were shot using 200T and watch them, you can see that really does come through in it. So those are the pros. The cons, I've got to be honest, are mainly focused around the way this film's marketed, although there are a couple of other issues. Now, one of the issues, before I get onto the marketing side of the things, one of the issues is that I don't think that their quality control when they're removing this remjet layer is quite up to spec, because now I expect shooting film and scanning it to have to remove dust from negatives, but if you've got dust on a negative that is picked up after it's been exposed and after it's been developed, that scans as white. Now, if you've got dust or marks or crap on the negative when you shoot it, or even damage to the colour base layer, what you get there is not white, but it is got a coloured halo around it. Now, particularly if it doesn't have an anti-halation layer on there or a remjet layer on there, you're going to get even more of it on there. And this shot I'm going to show you now, it's not actually a shot, it's a blow up from the corner of one of the negatives. And you can see just how bad what I'm talking about is here. And this appears on an awful lot of the negatives. I've also found some real issues with, and this tended to appear at the start of both rolls, where there was an awful lot of what appeared to be either light tunnelling from poor film canisters, or that light had somehow got into whatever process they were using for respooling. And I picked up and lost quite a few shots because of this pickup of light. So I don't think the quality control is there at wherever Candido are making, or whoever they're getting to respool this film for them, and for the process of removing the remjet layer. So it required a lot more work in post to clean up, a lot more than just the normal dust that you are invariably going to have to get rid of. And the quality control lost me a few shots as well, or rather the lack of quality control lost me a few shots as well. So, you know, that's on the image side. Also, because they're not clear about what this is, and the remjet layer has been removed and there's no anti-halation, you've got the issues with the halation around high contrast areas and light sources that I mentioned. Now, if you're aware of that, that can actually be useful. There are films that are specifically sold without an anti-halation layer on, so that people can get that halo glow around light sources. But you've got to know about it to take advantage of it. And this is not clearly laid out at all, as I've already covered, on Candido's website. At all. Yeah, in the where is the film manufactured question of their FAQs, they go through, you know, we work with various producers, partners they call them, across Europe and Asia to bring you the best film possible, cost-effective rates, blah blah blah. Before the releasing the film, we tried and tested various samples from different manufacturers before deciding on the highest quality product. Well, I'm sorry, Candido, I don't think your film lives up to that claim. I really don't. And I don't think you're being honest about exactly what your film is, and you should be. You should tell people exactly what it is. That this is not standard C41 colour negative film for stills photography. Be open. Tell them that, you know, you don't even need to tell them what movie film stock it is, but tell them it's a movie film stock that you've removed the remjet from. Be open about that, you know, and be a bit more accurate in your FAQs if I'm getting picky here, because, you know, the first one is, does your film fit in all your cameras? Does your film fit in all cameras? Yes, all our film canisters are the same size. They've been tested in point and shoot as well as several professional film photography cameras. Okay, so it's going to work in my Bronica, is it? It's going to work in me Holga. It's going to work in that entire top row there, the vast majority of which are old 126, 127, and a whole host of other formats. No, it's not. It's a 35mm film. Point out clearly in your FAQs that it's a 35mm film. It's a small point, but you're marketing this film predominantly to people who seem to be starting out in photography. So this kind of thing needs to be accurate. that's basically my thoughts, my rant about Candido 200T. I think it's an opportunity wasted, because properly marketed and with better quality control, this has actually got the potential to be a decent repackaged movie film stock. But tell people about that. Let people know. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't try and hide between what appears to be clever, hip and trendy marketing and taglines, you know, like pay for flights, not film. Well, I can buy Kodak cheaper than your film stock, so maybe I'll stick with Kodak and get a flight. But I'm not going to save enough money on film stock either way to pay for flights. It's odd. So it's a nice try, and some of the results I got off of this I do genuinely like, but it's got to be a no from me in terms of am I going to reuse this, but purely because, to a degree, of the way they've gone about this, and certainly the issues with their quality control. So yeah, that's my not so quick review, of Candido 200. Buyer beware is the main one here. Know what it's about. But if you've enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button, and if you want to see more content like this, please do like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much for watching. Take care. Bye.